Hello guys, welcome to my new course in which I will show you some very tricky lines, and most of those lines are extremely rare, and the idea of this course is to show you just some ideas. Most of them can confuse your opponent, so they are good for blitz rapid games, but some of them are quite serious, and you can play them maybe even in the classical games. So basically, I'm trying to avoid all the main openings like Italian, Ruy Lopez, Scotch, or anywhere there is a lot of theory. And the only purely theoretical line which we'll see is the Philidor defense from black's point of view. So after e4, we're going to see almost all the possible moves, which make some sense, of course, not like a5 or h5, but moves like, of course, we start with d6 as a more serious move, but moves like bishop c5, for example, or moves like queen e7 or queen f6. For example, those two moves, they look like almost the same, but they have completely different ideas, because obviously the queen on f6 is allowing the bishop to move on c5, and the queen on e7 is blocking the bishop. So there are various ideas. We are looking also at the lines like f5. This is actually quite a decent gambit. I know even some grandmasters who play this, especially in the blitz games, a lot, because usually black is very well prepared, so he can play faster in those blitz games, and white is most of the time not so familiar, so he starts to think what to do, and then his time is running away. Also, we will see some tricky lines like, for example, this knight c6, bishop c4, and then f5. This also is possible, even if the bishop is on c4, it's not losing anything. Or we'll see some lines like this d4, d5. So it will be a lot of fun, because probably you will learn a lot of lines which maybe you have never seen before. And I think this course will help you to broaden your repertoire from black's point of view, in case you play only e5 and you bored from this Italian gioco piano stuffs and some lines where there is a lot of maneuvering, a lot of theory, and you want to try to invent something new. And as most, okay, if not most, but some of the lines which are in the course are with the move f5. So in this intro video, I can give you some brief ideas now when f5 is good and when f5 maybe could be skipped, and you can play for some more solid setups. In general, in this moment f5 is, I think, okay. So if you start with this move, of course, the most natural idea is that if you take, this is like the king's gambit, you can say that we are with the tempo down because we are with black, so even with white, it usually is not so great to play king's gambit, that it's considered very risky. And how about with black without a tempo? But the point is that when the knight is on f3, there is no queen h5 check, and also e4 comes with the tempo. And now if white plays the knight forward, black can just go knight f6 and then d5 or d6, d5. The idea is, of course, like in the king's gambit, to play d5 and then eventually to manage to take the pawn back on f5. So white must know what to do, and usually he plays knight e5, and then there are various ideas, but the main line, and probably the best move, is queen f6. I know that there are people who play knight f6, they sacrifice the other pawn, and then knight c6, bishop c5, but 2 pawns down is already a bit too much. Queen f6, of course, the idea is to prevent this check, because after queen h5 you can play g6, and now the knight is hanging, so white has to either defend, this is the best to defend the knight, otherwise if he goes back to f3 or d3, you just take this pawn, right, and then the knight doesn't have where to go. So d4, d6, and then he has to go somewhere, and if they don't know, it's very possible that they go back to f3, which is a mistake, because after you take on e4, again the knight is under attack. So this is the best move, and then we will see that there are plenty of theoretical lines. Of course, the most popular idea with f5 is here, but there is so much theory, and this is considered to be one of the main choices for black. That's why it's not in our course, because this is just a normal line. So we want to try to see something more strange, like here, for example. This is looking very dangerous because the bishop is on this diagonal, and normally we say to, for example, the children, when I have students, do not play f5 when there is a bishop on c4. But it's actually not losing something. Again, of course, the idea is if he takes, immediately you go d5, and this is even better that the bishop is here. So probably white should not take, but okay, if he plays d3, this is some kind of, again, you can say king's gambit declined with one tempo down. So it's not ideal, of course, white should have some advantage, but you will see that this is not the end of the world, so it's quite possible. And queen e7. Queen e7 is a very curious move, which looks very strange. Actually, I have played something similar with white. You might ask how exactly you get this with white. When I play e4 and they play e6 for French, sometimes when I play queen e2 second move, they go e5. So basically black is losing one move, e6, e5, but he claims that because your queen is on e2 and she's blocking the bishop, this actually is fine. So I have exactly this, but simply white has one extra move, of course, with white. And the plan here is to hold the pawn on e5, do not exchange, even if white goes for some d4, black, there are some ideas, of course, that you take and attack the pawn, but usually people, they just try to play d6, and then to play c6, just to defend everything the queen is defending. So this can even transpose to some kind of Philidor ideas, or perk, because knight f6, knight d7 is coming, and then g6, bishop g7. This is exactly like in the perk, more or less. For Philidor, of course, you need to remove this queen, so maybe you can go queen c7, but then it will be some Philidor with one tempo down. So it's not the greatest idea. And after queen f6, the idea is that if white is afraid of this move, let's say he plays something like this, black can go bishop c5, and then this knight goes to e7, g6, even some people go for g5, pawn to g5, h5, g4, and attack on f2. So if white is not playing active, actually this is very dangerous opening for them, because black has a very clear plan to attack on the king side, and if white don't know what to do, it's actually quite good for black. So there will be plenty of lines like this. Also, of course, we will see some very popular gambits like this one. Maybe some of you know, in the last few years there have been a lot of talks about this gambit, and then the idea is bishop c5 and knight g4 and attack against f2. So I'm sure that you're going to enjoy this course. And while you're watching the Olympiad now, you can also try to learn some new tricks, so to use them for the next games. And I wish you good luck, and enjoy my new course.